From postcard-perfect landscapes to bustling cities, many U.S. states look prosperous on the surface. Yet beneath the charm, some are sinking under the weight of staggering debts, pension liabilities, and shrinking revenues. In 2025, the financial crisis facing several states is deepening, leaving taxpayers with enormous burdens and casting doubt on the future stability of essential public services. Today on Global Lens, we reveal the 10 U.S. states going broke in 2025. Stay with us until the end, and don't forget to subscribe to Global Lens for more stories that uncover the truth behind global and domestic trends. Chapter 1. Vermont. Vermont, with its green mountains, maple syrup, and artisanal cheese, often seems like a vision of New England charm. Yet in fiscal terms, the state is increasingly fragile. In May 2024, former Governor Howard Dean issued a stark warning about Vermont's finances, pointing to growing deficits and unsustainable healthcare costs. By September 2024, Vermont Public reported that hospitals across the state were on the verge of bankruptcy. Analysts concluded that hospitals would require as much as $3 billion in subsidies, either through higher insurance premiums or direct taxpayer support, over the next 5 years to avoid collapse. This kind of liability is enormous for a state with fewer than 700,000 residents. Adding to the problem, CNBC ranked Vermont as one of the nation's highest debt states in late 2024, noting that taxpayers face a burden of $10,900 each. For comparison, that's higher than the average annual property tax bill in many states, and it comes before other obligations like mortgages, tuition, or healthcare costs. Part of Vermont's problem is its economic structure. The state has limited industry, slow population growth, and a tax base heavily reliant on personal income and property taxes. While tourism and agriculture bring in seasonal revenue, they are not sufficient to fund long-term liabilities. Without reforms to healthcare funding and pension obligations, Vermont may be forced to make painful cuts to services, undermining its quality of life. Chapter 2. Kentucky. Kentucky, celebrated for the Kentucky Derby, bourbon, and bluegrass music, is now grappling with severe financial strain. According to Data Z, Kentucky is a sinkhole state, meaning its liabilities far exceed its assets. With only $23 billion available to cover bills totaling $42.5 billion, the state faces a staggering $19.5 billion hole. This translates into a taxpayer burden of $13,200 per resident. In a state where median household income lags nearly $10,000 behind the national average, this level of debt is especially daunting. The imbalance puts public services like education, healthcare, and policing under immense strain. Kentucky's fiscal struggles are partly rooted in the decline of the coal industry. Once a pillar of its economy, coal has seen dramatic declines, eroding both jobs and tax revenues. While manufacturing and logistics have grown, they have not been enough to close the gap. Education funding shortfalls have long-term consequences too. Underfunded schools make it harder for Kentucky to attract new businesses that depend on a skilled workforce. As a result, the state risks being trapped in a cycle where weak finances limit future growth, and slow growth worsens financial distress. Chapter 3. Louisiana. Louisiana is rich in culture, from jazz and Creole cuisine to Mardi Gras celebrations. Yet beneath its vibrant heritage lies deep economic fragility. Decades of natural disasters, including Hurricane Katrina and more recent hurricanes, have cost billions in recovery funds while disrupting the state's already limited economy. According to CNBC, Louisiana's taxpayer burden stands at $13,400. Axios identified it as part of the struggling belt of states, where affordability doesn't translate into prosperity. The cost of living is about 9% lower than the national average, and housing costs are 18% lower. Yet, Louisiana still ranks among the poorest and hungriest states in America. This contradiction stems from systemic issues: underemployment, food insecurity, and underfunded social services. Low wages prevent families from achieving stability, while budget shortfalls prevent the state from adequately funding education and healthcare. Louisiana's heavy reliance on the energy sector makes matters worse. volatile oil prices affect revenue unpredictably, leaving the state vulnerable to global market swings. Without broader diversification into technology, healthcare, and advanced manufacturing, Louisiana risks financial instability becoming a permanent reality. Chapter 4. Delaware. Delaware may be small, but it has played an outsized role in American business by offering corporate-friendly laws. Thousands of U.S. and international companies are incorporated here, creating an image of prosperity. But beneath the surface, Delaware faces serious financial strain. CNBC reports a taxpayer burden of $15,400. A Better Delaware revealed in 2024 that the state has been spending heavily on new programs, many funded by temporary federal aid during the pandemic. Nearly $4 billion in surplus funds were used to expand budgets. But with federal support drying up, Delaware now must cover ongoing obligations with limited state revenues. According to Data Z, Delaware has only $7.8 billion in assets against $14 billion in bills, leaving a $6.2 billion hole. This is particularly alarming given that the state's population is under 1 million. On a per capita basis, Delaware's debt burden rivals some of the largest states in the country. If Delaware cannot restructure its spending, it may be forced into unpopular choices, slashing services, raising taxes, or borrowing even more. Each option threatens to weaken its reputation as a business-friendly state. Chapter 5. Hawaii. Hawaii is often described as paradise, but behind its palm trees and beaches is a state facing one of the toughest fiscal challenges in the nation. CNBC places the taxpayer burden at $16,500, while Data Z estimates the state's financial hole at nearly $9 billion. Hawaii's challenges stem largely from its geography. Being 2,500 miles from the mainland, virtually everything, from food to fuel, must be imported, inflating costs dramatically. USA Today reported in 2024 that Hawaii had the highest household bills in the U.S., with average monthly expenses of $3,991, or 45% above the national average. The state also depends heavily on tourism, which makes its revenues vulnerable to global events. The pandemic caused devastating losses, and future risks include geopolitical tensions, climate-related disasters, and airline disruptions. Meanwhile, housing costs in Hawaii are among the highest in the nation. This pushes many middle-class families to the brink and reduces the tax base as younger residents leave for the mainland. Unless Hawaii diversifies its economy into areas like renewable energy, technology, and specialized healthcare, its financial struggles will likely intensify. Chapter 6. California. California has long symbolized the American dream, from the gold rush to Silicon Valley. Yet in fiscal terms, the Golden State faces a crisis of enormous proportions. According to CNBC, taxpayers shoulder a burden of $17,400 each. Data Z calculates a financial hole of $535.5 billion, making California one of the most indebted states in the country. One major issue is pensions. The San Francisco Chronicle reported in 2024 that underfunded pension liabilities total $250 billion. These obligations siphon billions from state budgets that might otherwise go to infrastructure or education. The state's high cost of living compounds the problem. Housing prices are among the highest in the nation, healthcare is expensive, and transportation costs are climbing. These factors reduce disposable income and limit the ability of residents to absorb higher taxes. California's tech-heavy economy adds volatility. When Silicon Valley thrives, tax revenues soar. When it slows, deficits balloon. Meanwhile, homelessness and illegal immigration create additional fiscal pressures. California's ability to recover depends on pension reform and diversifying revenue sources, but political gridlock often stalls meaningful change. Chapter 7. Massachusetts. Massachusetts is proud of its universities, hospitals, and rich history. Yet even this prosperous New England state is sinking under financial obligations. CNBC reports a taxpayer burden of $25,400, while Data Z puts the financial hole at $74 billion. Healthcare and education costs have risen steadily, demanding ever larger slices of the budget. Pension obligations also weigh heavily, and infrastructure, from aging bridges to outdated transit systems, requires billions in upgrades. Massachusetts also faces demographic challenges. An aging population increases demand for healthcare and pensions, while younger residents often migrate to states with lower housing costs. This shift weakens the tax base, making it harder to meet rising obligations. Despite a strong technology and biotech sector, Massachusetts struggles to balance revenue and spending. Without fiscal reforms, the state may be forced into higher taxes that risk driving away more residents and businesses. Chapter 8. Illinois. Illinois, home to Chicago and a proud industrial past, is now nearly synonymous with fiscal crisis. CNBC reports a taxpayer burden of $37,000 per person. Truth in Accounting ranked it 48th out of 50 states for financial health. At the core of Illinois' problem is pensions. By 2023, unfunded liabilities reached $218 billion, the worst in the nation. In just 1 year, those obligations grew by $2.5 billion. Pension costs consume a massive share of the budget, crowding out spending on schools, infrastructure, and healthcare. Illinois also suffers from population decline. Residents are leaving for states with lower taxes and better job growth. This exodus reduces tax revenues, creating a vicious cycle of deficits and debt. Chicago, the state's economic engine, faces its own crises, from crime to budget gaps, compounding the statewide picture. Without fundamental pension reform and economic revitalization, Illinois risks remaining locked in financial decline for decades to come. Chapter 9. New Jersey. New Jersey, known for its beaches, boardwalks, and diners, carries one of the heaviest fiscal burdens in America. CNBC places the taxpayer burden at $42,500, while Data Z estimates liabilities at $214 billion against just $57.2 billion in assets. Pensions and property taxes dominate the state's fiscal picture. Property taxes are among the highest in the nation, yet revenues are still insufficient to meet obligations. Transit systems require billions in annual subsidies, while healthcare and education costs climb relentlessly. Forecasts from the Sweeney Center in 2024 showed that even under optimistic scenarios, New Jersey faces multi-billion-dollar deficits in coming years. This is despite assumptions of steady revenue growth. The burden has already pushed many families out of the state. Outmigration is now a significant issue, shrinking the tax base and worsening fiscal strain. Unless dramatic reforms are enacted, New Jersey's motto of liberty and prosperity risks being overshadowed by debt and deficits. Chapter 10. Connecticut. Connecticut, once a leader in industry and insurance, is now the most financially troubled state in 2025. CNBC ranks its taxpayer burden at $44,500, the highest in the country. Data Z estimates a $64.9 billion financial hole, with just $21 billion in assets against $86 billion in bills. The state's pension system is among the most generous but also among the least funded. Healthcare costs, social services, and high wages for public employees add to the burden. Even when Connecticut reports budget surpluses, watchdogs note that liabilities are hidden through accounting maneuvers. Connecticut is also struggling economically. In 2024, Connecticut Inside Investigator reported that the state lagged behind the rest of the country in GDP and job growth during post-pandemic recovery. Despite high taxes, revenues are insufficient to keep pace with obligations. With some of the highest living costs in New England, residents increasingly question whether staying in Connecticut is worth it. Outmigration is rising, and the state's financial outlook remains dire. Unless sweeping reforms occur, Connecticut may remain the nation's prime example of fiscal mismanagement. From Vermont's rural struggles to Connecticut's mounting pension crisis, these 10 states highlight how fiscal mismanagement, high costs, and economic dependence can erode even the most prosperous reputations. As America navigates a new era of financial challenges, the fate of these states offers a stark warning of what happens when spending outpaces sustainability. Which state surprised you the most on this list? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to keep uncovering the realities shaping our world, make sure to subscribe to Global Lens for more deep dives into the stories that matter.